this isn't quite working out. Okay, so are we utilizing their skills? They're not doing this particularly well. Is it because they don't actually like it? They're not very good at it. How, do they need some training? It's about really, and that's exactly what you're talking about. So we want to be here. This is the team we've got. So do we have the right team? Are we using them in the right way? And can we move them forward? And from that leadership point of view, where people are concerned, it's parallel. It's the same when you're in business as well. If you look for that quick fix, you are creating problems down the line. I call them the Band-Aid solutions, or my other phrase is the $27 that's going to save your life. It's not. All that $27 solution is going to do is it's just a Band-Aid for now. And, within 6 months, 12 months, or whenever, you are going to have another problem, and potentially a bigger problem because you didn't give it the time and attention. And I think that goes back sometimes, I've just got to fix it, in that panic mode, rather than going, okay, where are we at with this? Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the best way to address that?
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Lindsey, welcome to Leading with Integrity. Lovely to have you on the show. Looking forward to this conversation. I'm sure it's going to be high energy, as it always is with you.
Well, thank you for inviting me along. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, to start us off, tell us about yourself, your career so far, what you do today, why you do it, etc.
My career so far. I'm 58. We'd be here all day. No,
well,
we've got all day. It's fine. I am a business coach. I've been doing it for about 12, 13 years. So my whole process is around helping my clients really understand what success looks and feels like for them. And then we look at their business model, and I just support, help, guide, inspire them to bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And I'm being careful of my words, David, here. I'm being very, very careful, because I don't believe there is a 10 steps to being a millionaire by last Tuesday. Because if there was, we'd all be millionaires, wouldn't we? So my ethos is around helping my clients create their own blueprint or formula for creating the success that they desire and what's most important to them. And I absolutely love it. It's a real privilege and honor. And what's been quite interesting in my own journey, because I had breast cancer in 2020. Yes, that was the lockdown year. And I had 3 operations in lockdown. To be fair, David, don't feel sorry for me. When you're stuck in a house with a husband and 2 children, getting out for a hospital appointment is genius. But what really came up for me then is, even more important, I want business owners to live a really incredible life. And actually, your business should enable you to do that. It should empower you, and all those other incredible words. And that's really me in a nutshell, I think, without boring you with the whole story about, I was once a waitress in a cocktail bar.
I never did the cocktail bar, but stuffing envelopes, which is equally uninspiring, was probably my first job. So
I've done a bit of that.
It's best left in the footnotes, though, yes, isn't it? On the cutting room floor, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay, so didn't know that about the breast cancer in 2020 as well. That doesn't feel like it was a nice time to be going through the NHS either.
I was very fortunate. I had an amazing surgeon who fought to be able to continue treating. I think what was really important for me, or maybe it was a realization, I always like to pride, you pride yourself, don't you, on walking the talk. I'm walking it. I'm doing it. And there was this moment, because my first operation was due in March, the first week of lockdown. And so sort of from January, when the process started, I was a bit like, I don't know what this journey is going to look like. I really need to look at my business model. I need to make sure that I am streamlined, that I am, focusing and delivering those offers and products that really matter to me and make a difference. And so actually, I think it was a gift. In so many ways, it was a gift.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of people just from the COVID years in general, isn't it? I mean, things like the Great Resignation comes up a lot, but that whole period of, I think for a lot of people who were in employed roles at the start of the pandemic and weren't by the end of it, it's kind of that moment of realization of like, yeah, my boss doesn't really care about my future that much. Maybe I should do it myself.
Absolutely. It was that word. There's a word I really don't like, and it's from 2020, and it's the word pivot.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
So what? And I didn't really like pivoting before. I'm an ex-netball player, and pivoting, that's what we used to do on the court. You know, it's not something that, you know, it just meant we were turning in a different direction, which is what pivoting is in business. But actually, I think it just became a slogan. Everyone needs to pivot. You need to be pivoting personally and in business and, you know, in work and all of those things. And I don't think that really meant anything to anybody. I think it was just another catchphrase.
Yeah, it's one of those classic management speak words, wasn't it? Very quickly. And it always, to me, just made me think of like, being indecisive because you're just constantly changing direction. Like, pick one and stick with it long enough to at least know if it's working before you change your mind again.
Absolutely.
And also like the slightly less serious response of like, well, isn't everyone getting dizzy by now sort of thing? Because I know I was. So, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, so, I mean, main thing, glad you came through it okay and you're still with us. That's the important thing. And having that purpose behind you as well. I mean, that's got to be, I guess, doubling down on it, as you said.
Yeah, it is. And I think when we have a vision, it is so much easier to get there. Whether that's in life, you know, you can use vision, purpose, why, whichever word, you know, suits you best. And that's in life, business and careers. If you don't know where you're going, it's like getting into your car and saying, I'm having a lovely day, but I'm not going to put anything into sat-nav and we'll see what happens. Well, nothing happens. You just sat there and, you know, so why purpose? It really does drive your decision making. You know, and I think it almost makes us a little bit braver. When we know where we're going, we can be more courageous. So when we make those decisions, we can act upon them. Because, you know, if you don't act upon a decision, that's a decision in itself.
You're right, it is. And I find it makes that process and decision making a lot easier as well. Like if you know why you're doing it, and it's true for leadership as much as it is for running a business or being a freelance or whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. You don't have to think about it as much because you know what the goal is, and it's a lot easier because it's just like, okay, well, which of these outcomes will result in what I want to achieve? The vision, the purpose, the why.
Yeah,
you know. Absolutely. And if the answer is it's not going to, then that's the decision, isn't it? Right, not doing that, do something else. Oversimplifying as I do.
But David, I think it is that simple, and that's the problem in life, in business, and whether you're a leader and employed. We overcomplicate everything. It couldn't possibly be that simple. We need a 25-step process to make them. We don't. We overcomplicate. I mean, as a business coach, most of my time is spent uncomplicating things for people. I go, what do you think of this? I'm like, oh, that's a bit complicated. And we just simplify everything. Maybe I should change, you know, the business coach that simplifies. A new tagline coming soon.
Great. Works for me. Yeah, some things need to be complicated. I don't think as many things as we think they do need to be. That was a complicated sentence, wasn't it? I could have made it simpler.
I know what you're saying. You know, if you're a brain surgeon, that's probably quite complex, that work.
Yeah.
Everything else we can simplify.
Yeah, or rocket scientist, something like that.
Yeah, that would be quite complex.
But even then, like, I feel like that's probably a lot simpler than we think it is. Put the explosive bit at the bottom, the important bit at the top. Press the button. Don't know.
I think you now might be oversimplifying, but I know what you're doing there.
Yes, anyway. My first actual question, I suppose, we were going to talk a bit about resilience, I think, and given that where we've already taken this conversation, I think we've got some hints to it already, but sometimes feels like it's another one of those buzzwords, doesn't it? But what does that word resilience mean to you? What does that look like?
It's a really interesting word, and I saw a video, and it was on, I'm not going to name a platform, it was on a platform the one platform it wasn't on was Tickety Talk, because I'm not on TikTok, so it wasn't there. But it was a school teacher that was talking to young people and talking about resilience and what it was. And I really liked how she was talking about, you're here, but you want to be here. And that resilience piece is that messy bit in the middle. I don't think she said messy bit in the middle, but for me, it's the messy bit in the middle. Resilience is how we problem solve, it's how we learn, it's how we grow, it's how we fall over and get back up. And in getting back up, we go, okay, what can we learn from that? But I think resilience is really challenging because it's that messy bit in the middle. And that's really uncomfortable, whether you're in business, whether that's something personal, or whether you're employed. It's that piece in the middle which can feel really uncomfortable. But that's where the growth happens, when we become uncomfortable. And I always say the magic always happens when we step outside of our comfort zone. But for me, I was really thinking about resilience and what it meant. And it is that ability to adapt, to develop, and to see things differently. I guess in many ways, it's about going, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What can I do differently? So it's for me, and I did write a few notes earlier, and one of the words I wrote down or phrases was being curious. Because isn't that what it's about? If we're looking at different ways to do things, learning, growing, developing, moving forward, finding different ways, then that is about being curious. And if we can see resilience as being curious, that feels, because I think we've worked out, David, you and I don't really like buzzwords. So, you could almost put resilience to one side and just talk about curiosity.
I like that. Yeah. I've heard quite a few definitions of this word over the course of this year already. I quite like, if I had to pick a favourite, it would probably be the one that kind of describes resilience as a muscle. It's not so much a skill or something that you have or don't have. It's something you have to kind of work at and keep going with. And I think your definition there quite nicely fits within that as well, because I think we too easily look at it as a kind of an on or off. You have it or you don't. Whereas actually, it can probably flex based on how much you've had to practice it recently and the context at the time. And I think as business owners, it's something that a lot of people struggle with as well, especially when something hasn't worked, when you really need that resilience, that ability to, get back up, brush yourself off, try the next thing or ask the next curious question. And it's so powerful, so useful if you can get it right though.
It's quite interesting if you sort of, go to Google, other platforms are available, and start asking, what is resilience, etc. And they talk about resilience from, you start developing that muscle from a very, very early age. And it depends on your environment and your world around you and what you've experienced and all of those things. And that starts to play a part in how resilient you are, or your ability to be resilient or curious, to flex that muscle. But we can really develop that muscle. There are things that we can do to develop that muscle. And we don't have to wait for a pandemic or a crisis to start developing that muscle. And that's a message I'd really like to get across, actually, that, start developing that muscle before you need it. Because that's why, when that messy bit in the middle, if you suddenly go, oh no, I'm going to have to be really resilient here, which you wouldn't say, by the way, people, no one sits there and goes, I need to be really resilient. You're not going to say that. But when that moment comes, when you need to be resilient, that's way more challenging if it's not something that you've been doing or you've been practicing, or you have those skills, that you've already learned the skills that are needed to be resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a preemptive thing. 100% with you there. I think if you wait until the time you need it, then it's too late, isn't it? Like with a lot of these skills, I suspect.
If you wait too long, it'll be like the pandemic. You've got to pivot, and someone will go, right, I've got to pivot. And they'll go over here without giving it the thought. And where does that fit? And that's one of the reasons I really didn't like the word pivot, because what it made businesses do during that time is go, right, we need to pivot. We need to be here. So off they went, and they didn't stop and go, okay, things need to be different. Let's get curious about that. what needs to change different, but with their vision in mind. Because I think for some, they went off here. By the time the pandemic was over, they would have been a long way away from their vision, their why, their purpose. Then you've got to engineer yourself back again.
Yeah, I think it was almost a sense of panic, wasn't it? And I think people defaulted to that sort of the short term. We don't know how long this is going to last. We just need to keep the doors open for the next week or the next month, which became the next year, and so on. And you're right. Yeah, like by the time they got to that year point, they'd gone so far down another path that they probably didn't want to go down, but they felt forced to, and then you get stuck, don't you?
But if you look, not to use the pandemic, because there's a lot, it's that sort of, I think we're at the 5-year anniversary, aren't we? So there's a lot of talk about it at the moment. And I don't want to hark back to a time when, for many, it really wasn't very pleasant. I think when you look at those businesses that were a little bit more creative, so the pubs that were suddenly doing takeaways or deliveries, or they knew that they could access flour, for example. Okay, so we can get that in, and sort of almost turned themselves into mini shops for small communities. But that's such a good example, because a pub is a community space. So it was about saying, okay, so how can we support our community? And that's from curiosity.
I think that says quite a lot about your local pub.
Well, we did have a local pub that as you walked past, there was a thing outside and there was all sorts of things that you could buy. It is true.
Yeah. I fear that wasn't the case for every pub in the country. No. But no, I see what you're saying, though. I do agree with you. It's the curiosity, it's the willingness to innovate, but do it in the way that makes sense for your business.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, ignoring the buzzword of the pivot aspect of it, I still do have huge respect for all those businesses, even if they did end up going down the wrong path, because at least they kept going. Because it would have been so easy, wouldn't it? And especially with some of the government schemes that were going on, to just say, well, this isn't going to work. We're just going to shut up shop for a little while, and we'll be back next year or something.
And for some businesses, that was the right thing to do. And for others, it would have ended, not as they'd hoped. So, I agree with you. There is huge respect for anyone who went through that time. And we all did have to work slightly differently and do things slightly differently. Someone said, you'll have to stay at home. I was like, I've been staying at home for 7 years. I don't think much is going to change. So for some of us, nothing much changed.
Yeah, I was one of those people as well. Not by 7 years. For me, it was less than 6 months, I think. But that was enough time for me to get used to it and comfortable with it and quite enjoy it, actually. I don't know. One of those people who I enjoy just my alone time. Yeah. Just time with my own thoughts. Another question I want to ask you off the back of all of that, and maybe we can talk about it in the context of something other than COVID this time, but
yes, let's.
It's the praying example right now, isn't it, as you say? How do you cultivate optimism, especially during tough times like that? And then how does that approach the way or change the way that you approach work with your clients and just with people generally?
I don't know if you remember, but it must, I don't know, I'll say 12 months ago. I don't know when it was. But there was a lot on my LinkedIn feed about being toxic positivity. And for me, I was a bit like, oh, but I am positive. I am like this. Now I'm not allowed to be like this. So I think there is that piece, isn't there, around your ability to be optimistic, to be positive. And I think it's a little bit like the resilience muscle. It's a muscle and you need to keep using it. And there is a difference between pretending that everything is okay and putting on a very brave face and actually just being a genuinely my glass is half full kind of person. Now, I wasn't always a half glass. In fact, I was anything but half glass. It took a lot of inner work, if you like. It took a lot of thinking about myself and who do I want to be and what's important to me. And So being positive doesn't happen overnight. You can't say to someone, you just need to be more optimistic, it'll be fine. You can't switch that on. That is definitely not a switch for you to do on and off. It's just impossible. So how do I encourage optimism with my clients? How do I stay optimistic and positive? I think for me, it goes back to knowing where you want to be. Because if you're truly connected with what success looks and feels like, that vision, that purpose, that why, that's what drives you. That's what drives your decision making. That's what enables you to act upon your decisions. And that's the key piece there. And that, for me, is essential. But the other thing that I think is, I don't know why I keep saying thinking, because I don't think this at all. You need to surround yourself with people who match that energy, who are optimistic. Because if you are sat with a load of people going, oh, it's terrible, isn't it? Oh, it's really bad at the moment. I really don't know what to do. Yes, there is a space, and yes, there are times when we just need to rant it out. It's a bit like myself when I rant to my husband and I get it all out. I don't need him to fix anything. I don't need him to do anything. I just need to rant it out. So there is always, I don't think anyone should hold anything in. Speak to somebody, rant at somebody, find that confidant that you can do that with. But surrounding yourself with people who you aspire to be like, who you want to hang around with because they are positive and optimistic. And I think that's, for me, that is really, really key. So know where you're going, surrounding yourself with incredible people. I'd also say though, learn not to give yourself a hard time. Stuff goes wrong. Things happen. And unless you are a brain surgeon, I think you're going to be okay. And those times when things don't go quite to plan, or they didn't pan out as you'd hoped or as you'd expected, that's where the growth happens again, because you go, okay, so how could I have done it differently? It goes back to being curious again, which is resilience, is going, okay, that didn't quite work. How can I do better? How can I do it differently? What needs to change? What can I learn from it? So for me, it's all part and parcel. I really don't think we can look at one thing in isolation, because they are part and parcel of the moving forward, of the growth, of the development, whether that's of you as an individual, as a business owner in your business, or whether or career.
I can't disagree with anything you've said there. I agree completely.
Please do, David.
So, I mean, there's maybe some things I'd add to it. I do remember that whole thing it was on the feeds, wasn't it, about the toxic positivity. To start with, I would never have put you in that bracket, never in a million years. Because I think for me, the bit that makes it toxic is the lack of realism.
Yes.
And that's why I like the glass half full versus half empty analogy, because either way you look at it, there's still something in the glass, isn't there? So there's something to be optimistic and positive about. Therefore, it's realistic. Therefore, it's not toxic. But I've also encountered toxic positivity in the workplace as well. And I think that it can be genuinely damaging. And I can see why there was a bit of a movement against it when it's done in that way that's just completely blind or ignorant or deliberately ignoring reality.
Yeah.
As though, like, if I just say everything's fine, it will be fine kind of thing. That can be quite harmful. So, yeah, I mean, that's maybe a minor point of disagreement, but I think we're probably on the same page there anyway.
Actually, I wonder, David, do you think that toxic space and that toxic positivity in the workplace, when we're talking about, so when I say workplace, I immediately go to corporates. I immediately go to those with 30 or 40 more staff, let's say more than 50, because that feels like a good number. I just wonder if it's easier, because there's so much going on, because there's so many moving parts of the business, it's almost easier to go, well, everything's fine. Everyone's happy. It's all fine here. Look, it's all great. That from a staffing point of view, and equally easier maybe to stick your head in the sand and convince yourself that the business is doing well and it's successful. Where I think when it's a smaller business, it's much harder to stick your head in the sand, whether that's around your staff, team members, personnel, or whether that's around the business.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both, isn't it? I think there's
Yeah.
probably a bit of fear in it as well, like not wanting to admit, even if you like at your core in your real inside voice, you know the truth, you probably don't want to, or you perceive that if you do admit or talk about it in front of others in the business, that's going to lead to like a mass exodus or something, and you'll lose all the people, and that'll make everything worse. I think that plays a part in it. Also, I don't know. I just feel like it's a bit like intellectually lazy as well. I think in some cases, because it's like you don't want to. If I just say it's fine, then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to face the difficult conversation. I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair to some people there,
I
but
like that.
that was my experience of it, I suppose, or at least from my perspective at the time. But then we hear a lot in leadership now about authenticity and vulnerability, and I mean, leading with integrity is here built on these kinds of ideas and about honesty and transparency with the people you're leading. And part of it is for that exact reason, because if you lack that openness, if you're not sharing that this is the real picture, objectively speaking, we're not putting like a negative spin on it or an overly positive one. We're just, this is the picture. However, within that, these are the things we can be positive about and pat ourselves on the back for. These are the things we need to work on. But there's no, like, we're not, it's not this horrible, like, vicious cycle of negativity either. And I think there is a way of doing that achieves all of these things without lying to people or omitting facts or not facing the truth.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, isn't it, how you can look at it from an outside in, but when you're in it, you're in it. And sometimes you can't. I would say that my job's really easy because, I can see the wood for the trees. Well, of course I can, because it's not my forest. So when we look in, we can see things. I wonder actually as well that piece around fear. And if we say we're struggling, and this would happen whether you were a corporate or a solopreneur, nobody wants to go on social media and say, do you know what, I'm finding it hard right now. And it's been quite interesting in the early part of this year when I was having one-to-ones with people, and they were saying, how did you find last year? And I was really honest. Last year was tough. And last year was tough for a lot of business owners and a lot of businesses. And I think if we can all be more honest and see that as a way of supporting one another, of, that honesty, integrity and everything else, I think it would be a better world, a better place if we could just say, do you know what? It wasn't that good. And I'm quite happy to say financially, it was not, where I needed to be. However, where it was not where I wanted it to be financially, and it felt really quite tight at times, it gave me opportunity and time to develop and grow the business. So in some ways it was my worst year, and in other ways it was my best year because of different ways. But we need to be honest about that. We need to be honest and say, do you know what, it was tough. Because then I think that helps us to collectively be more curious.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I still struggle with that myself, at least in terms of saying it publicly or doing the social media side of it. And like, I'll quite happily in one-to-one conversations like this be like, yeah, last year was really tough, actually. And again, that was so like you, like in some ways, like, so like financially and in terms of the amount of paying contracts that I won, it was probably my worst year so far. But at the same time, in the respect of the freedom it gave me to do the things that I'm interested in that weren't at the time paying me anything, it was the best year ever.
And I think we all, when business owners land at my door, they tend to be really overwhelmed. They're trying to do everything. I always call it, like a melting pot. And my job is just to pull things out and go, what's that? And I go, I don't know. I started that in 2003 and now I don't know why. Okay, we'll get rid of that then. And what's this? I don't know. That was 1999. Okay, we'll get rid of that. So that's what we do. And that's that simplifying process and actually bringing it all down so it's much, much easier. And they've got to that point where they're just really, really busy. And in part, that happens when things aren't going quite as well or as we hoped or as we'd expected. There is that fine line between reacting and curiously building that resilience, going down the resilience route, because you go, I just need to do more marketing. I just need to do more of this. I just need to be doing more networking. I just need to be doing more of that. I need a product. I need a new service. And so we create more instead of sitting back and going, where am I going? What's my purpose, my why, et cetera, and go, okay, so what can I do in the business now? I've been gifted this time. What do I need to do? Because by the time they get to me, we're short on time because we're doing all of this. So that's when we have to pull everything out, get rid of the things that are eating their time to create the time to develop and grow their business. And then they can do it like that. Yeah, I've got time to do it now. I think that's often what happens. And if we're not talking enough about where we're all at, everyone's doing the knee-jerk stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, there's such a parallel to leadership there, isn't there, with the way, I really 100% don't believe that this is ever intentional or malicious. I think it's just like the necessity of the now or whatever that cliche is. But we end up either being forced by circumstance or by our own mindset, just focusing on that short term.
Yeah.
And for me, leadership is the long-term thinking. So if you're just thinking about how do I get, Steve to finish that project by the end of next week, then the way you're going to approach that conversation is very different to if you're actually thinking more about how do I make sure that Steve has everything he needs to be able to do his job for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years is too long, but 10 popped into my head.
Yeah, I like that.
And it is a very different mindset, and you'll approach that conversation very differently. And as a result, you will show up. That's where you show up as either a leader or a boss, in my opinion. So the boss will be that short-term thinking, whereas the leader is the one thinking, okay, this project is one thing, but what about the next one and the one after that and then the 10 after those?
Yeah. It's interesting because the clients I have who have staff, 90% of our time we spend talking about staff. And it is those that go, okay, well, this isn't quite working out. Okay, so are we utilizing their skills? They're not doing this particularly well. Is it because they don't actually like it? They're not very good at it. Do they need some training? It's about really, and that's exactly what you're talking about. So we want to be here. This is the team we've got. So do we have the right team? Are we using them in the right way? And can we move them forward? And from that leadership point of view, where people are concerned, it's parallel. It's the same when you're in business as well. If you look for that quick fix, you are creating problems down the line. I call them the Band-Aid solutions, or my other phrase is the $27 that's going to save your life. It's not. All that $27 solution is going to do is it's just a Band-Aid for now. And, within 6 months, 12 months, or whenever, you are going to have another problem, and potentially a bigger problem because you didn't give it the time and attention. And I think that goes back sometimes, I've just got to fix it. And that panic mode, rather than going, okay, where are we at with this? Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the best way to address that?
Yeah. So analogy or metaphor that's popped into my head as you were saying that is it's the difference between maintaining your car versus maintaining an aeroplane, right? So there's an aerospace background, as you can tell, obviously, from the picture behind me. But so with your car, I think most people, if they're faced with the cheap short-term solution versus the expensive long-term one, and they just want to keep the car on the road, they're going to pick the cheap one, aren't they? Mm. And it's not going to be a problem because worst case, it will just stop going forwards. And, nothing terrible is probably going to happen. But you wouldn't apply that logic to an airplane, would you? I don't think anyone would. Don't. Yeah, I mean, by law, they're probably not allowed to, but you wouldn't be if it's a cheap solution, it'll cost me £100, but the wing might fall off next week, I'll just risk it. Nobody's going to say that, are they? And it's the same thinking, I think, or the difference in approach. I might be straining that one a little bit. But.
No, I like it. I do like, but even if you look at your car, I know we just want to get our car on, but actually a cheap solution with your car is only going to cause you more problems down the line. It's the same.
Yeah, it's more expensive in the long run, definitely. Yeah, it is. But it's people don't think about that, or most people don't, I think. Okay, I mean, one other thing that I'd say about, or add to about the optimism thing, And this one I steal from Mr. Braithwaite, who I believe you know as well. Yes. Excellent former guest, him and Emily. He loves the mindset, the reframe, the shift in the way you look at things, particularly as business owners. And the one that he always says that always sticks in my brain is about changing the way you look at what you're doing. So it's not, I have to do this and that. It's, I get to do this.
Yeah. It's one of my faves. I used it a lot actually years ago. I've not used it so much recently, but if I can see that a client is really struggling with various things they need to do, and I go, okay, but you get to do this stuff. You get to do your marketing, which means you get to work with people. And they're like, oh yeah. So if you get to do this stuff, and there's another piece to that as well, because I think there's lots of people out there who would love to start a business, who aren't yet ready or aren't yet brave enough or haven't yet found the courage. They love the opportunity to get to do the stuff that the rest of us are doing all the time, the networking and the marketing and all those things. And a reframe is so important. It works really well, but what if it fails? But what if it doesn't? What if I don't make any sales? But what if you do? And I've had that with clients before, and they were like, well, I haven't made any sales yet. Yet. That's the word, yet. When's the can't close? Which is a phrase I don't like either, but, we use it for now. When's the can't close? Oh, in 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks. You get to promote this for 2 weeks. I think we're really good. Just the human nature. Oh, it's not working. And I've heard that before. Oh, it's not working. How long have you been doing it? Oh, a couple of weeks now. Yeah, that's not long enough to decide that it's not working. So there is so many things that we can reframe. And I totally agree with Alan. He's absolutely right. When we just take a moment, so it's when those negative thoughts, and actually this is one of the ways that you can strengthen that resilience muscle that you were talking about. So when that negative thought comes up, I can't do this. Yeah, but I get to start doing it. I could at least have a go at it. The minute you start discussing something, even when I say discussing, this is obviously you having a conversation in your head, which works fine, by the way, everyone. You just have to just switch it just slightly. We don't even have to, go too far with it. Sometimes it's just the change of a word. But when we can do that, that's what starts to build that resilience muscle. Oh, it didn't work, so I'm not going to do it again. Oh, it didn't work. I'm a failure. Okay, be curious. Okay, it didn't work this time. What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this? The reframe is just magic. And it's where I believe, and I expect Alan would agree, it's where the golden nuggets are. Because if you can start switching it, you go, I get to do my marketing. So what kind of marketing do I want to do? Suddenly everything feels different. And when we shift that energy, whether life, business, leadership, just shift it. I get to lead people. Where do I want to lead them to? I get to do this. How do I want to bring these people with me? How do I want to encourage and inspire this next generation of leader? And you can use it in anything. I'm all over that. Alan is a genius. Let's not tell him I said that.
Yeah, he probably won't listen to this. Probably.
I bet he does. He will.
Yeah, it's not like he's the most frequent liker and commenter on this podcast or anything. It's almost certain that he won't see it. I might make a clip out of that bit just to make sure he really does see it.
Absolutely. Come on, Alan. Come and listen.
Let's talk about defining success, because I think this is a subject that, again, it's come up quite a lot recently. It's another take on the reframing, I suppose, isn't it? But I think it's a problem with businesses. There's a thing with entrepreneurial hustle culture as well, and society at large, and the way that we define success in others' eyes, I suppose, rather than our own. So, I mean, how do you help people break free from some of those less helpful definitions and then pick one that fits them?
I don't care what anyone said, and I always say that. I don't care how many zeros you want at the end of your numbers, because the number is not important to me. If it's important to you, please tell me that you have gone through a process to choose that you want to be 6 figures or 7 figures, or you want to be 5 figures and just having a great time. success is absolutely personal. And until we allow it to be personal, and if I get animated, just tell me, because it's a real bugbear of mine. There are too many business coaches, there are too many gurus out there that will be standing in front of their lovely Lamborghini, in front of their 10-bedroom mansion, waving and pointing at things, telling you that you can have this, 100K in 90 days and all this baloney. It is such false rubbish. If you want success, you are going to have to work at it. So work towards something that you have chosen. You define it. If you want 6 figures, but you only want to work 4 days a week, let's make that happen. If you want solid 4-figure months and you want it to be easy and you want to go swimming once a week and you want to pick your kids up from school, you want to go and volunteer at the local old people's place and sing, decide what that is. And please do not make success about your business turnover or profit. And we should talk about profit really, because turnover is complete vanity. If your career, if you are in leadership, if you want to be the CEO, but be the type of CEO you want. Because if you want to be the CEO that finishes at 5 o'clock every day, be that person. Just because everyone else says you've got to be at your desk till 10 o'clock at night, otherwise you're not a proper CEO. It's all rubbish. So for me, it's about really deciding what success looks and feels like to you as an individual and go after it. Because if you've got to work hard, and sadly, I do talk about making business easy and about giving you your time back and everything else, but at the beginning you have to do the work. So no matter where you are on your business journey, you may have already done the work, you may be about to pivot and have to do some more work. There'll always be more work, and there'll be times when we have to work that a little bit harder. So if you've got to do the work, don't aim for somebody else's success just because everyone else says 6 figures. And I remember working with a coach, 5-6 years ago now. I said, you're not using 6 figures in your marketing, I think. And I was like, I don't even know if I can coach anyone to 6 figures. And then I was like, hang on a minute. I have got 2 clients who are 6 figures. I am doing it. So there was a bit of imposter syndrome going on. Got my head around it. And I was like, okay, I'll change my messaging to say that, I can help you achieve 6 figures. By the time I'd got my head around it, changed my marketing and my messaging, suddenly everyone wanted to be 7 figures. I was like, hang on a minute, because that's how quickly things will change. And actually, it didn't feel right with me. It didn't sit well with me. So then I had to change my messaging again. So it's about what's really important to you. And nobody can tell you that your success is not worthy. Nobody can tell you that your success doesn't matter or isn't as important as the next person's success. It's bullshit. You decide and you go after it in the best way for you. Because I have this other, David, I don't know how much time we've got, but I need to tell you about this other thing that really gets my goat.
Go on, we've got time.
Okay, so there are 2 things around time. Time management, because let's be really honest, you cannot manage time. Time is just going to, unless you've got a time machine, there ain't nothing you can do about it. The only thing you can manage is yourself. And the other thing that really upsets me, and they are related, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. We don't. My 24 hours with 2 teenagers and a husband that's just had a hip replacement is not the same as somebody who's, 28, just moved into their new home, doing a little bit of internet dating. They're out. They have way more hours than I do. But perhaps they don't. Perhaps they are a carer. You cannot talk, it just drives me insane. So behind everything I do, how many hours do you want to give your business to achieve that success? And if I have to give you a bit of a reality check and say, okay, you want this, it's doable, but if you only have and want to give that number of hours, it's going to take us a little bit longer. Is that okay? And if it's okay, we're working towards success on your terms and in your way, if I could get my words out. I went on my soapbox, David. Sorry about that.
No, I liked it. It was good. I agree with you on time as well. Time is relative. In theory, I have the same hours in the day now as I did 10 years ago, but when I wake up in the morning, it doesn't feel like it.
Because we age as well, don't we? And suddenly we have to get And I don't know if there's so many books, isn't there? There's the 5 a.m. club and all of this, or the 4 a.m. club or some madness.
That one's in the bin for me,
I'm like,
afraid.
God, I'd have to, because I've got 2 children, I have to get them to school. I'd be like getting up at 2 in the morning to get everything done I needed to do. So and then do all the things I'm supposed to do to be in this club. So I'd be able to get them to school. Well, I'd be going to bed at 5 in the afternoon. I mean, it just doesn't work. And I really struggle with all of that. Do it your way. And whatever your way is, as long as you're moving towards success that you have decided upon, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And the cynic in me, I think, of those gurus who are posting all that stuff, it's not true for them anyway.
Well, I can tell you, I was on somebody's mailing list who I quite liked. It was all this kind of 5 a.m. stuff. Well, actually, I don't know if he was particularly around that. But he would always give tips and everything else. And one day he was talking about getting up at 5 a.m. So I emailed him back. I think the children were quite small at the time. I was like, that's hysterical. For me to do that, I'd have to go to bed before I got up, or get up before I went to bed, kind of thing. And he came back to me and he said, yes, he said, I've also got children now and I don't get up at that time. So you're churning out the same content, yet your own circumstances have changed and you're not getting up at that time of the morning. I can't remember who it was. I unsubscribed at that point.
Well, yeah, I don't blame you. There's a certain cynicism and manipulation going on there, isn't there?
Absolutely. Or at least he had the guts to actually email me back and go, "You're right."
He was probably sleep deprived, being up with the kids, and didn't think about it until too late. Yeah. It's a funny one. Like, I don't think they own the big houses or the cars either. I think they hire them for the day to shoot the ads, and then that's it. But
some of them do. I can assure you.
I'm a cynic at heart, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I guess there. I'm totally with you, and I know that I do know people that have done that. Not in my arena, I should add quickly. I know of other people that have done it, but I always sit back and go, I tell you what, you do you, I'll do me. Because I know I sit here with integrity and truth. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Obviously, the name of the podcast is a clue there, isn't it?
It is. Have I done a really good loop back to your podcast?
Yeah, we have, haven't we? Yeah. I think, the most important message there, I mean, it's good advice for dating as well, allegedly, is be yourself. Like, do it your way. Because if you're not doing that, it's not sustainable anyway. There'll come a point, if you're faking it, you just run out of energy or time or resources or money to be able to fake it anymore. And then what have you got at the end of that? You've got a business you can't keep up anymore. So, yeah.
That's the same, actually, David, with optimism. You will spend, if you're not naturally optimistic, or you're going through a difficult time, or you haven't yet developed that ability, you will use as much energy pretending as you could in going, right, who do I want to be? Why do I want to be that person? What needs to change and what do I need to do? It's the same energy expended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's true for so many walks of life, isn't it?
Yes.
Excellent for leadership too. Authenticity in leadership. We're back to that again.
As we should.
Yeah. And I think we were talking about that in the context of business success, but I think most, if not all of that, reads across to like personal happiness and like fulfillment in life as well. So yeah, love all of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why there is that wheel of life, isn't there? And I mean, I do have a wheel of life exercise. I haven't used it with any of my clients for years, but I think there are 8 elements. But what I know is if we work on one area, and that might be wealth, that might be health, that might be relationships, whichever area you choose to work on, the others benefit. How magical is that?
It's certainly a time saver.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all of that in mind that we've talked about so far, what would be the best piece of advice you could offer to a first-time business owner?
Surround yourself with amazing people. As you know, David, we met through networking, and I'm a massive advocate of networking. And I truly believe, one, that can be the fastest way to grow your business. and networking should always be part of your marketing strategy. It is a core part of mine. And for me, when you surround yourself with people in the right group, they will want to lift you up. They will want to answer your questions. They will want to help you, and they will want you to be successful. So it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. And I think networking does that really, really quickly. Otherwise, you're asking your partner, your mum, your brother, your cat for business advice. And unless they have a successful business, their only job is to keep you safe. So and in business, we have to take some risk. And in relation, I know you only asked for one thing, but in relation of risk, decide up front what you are willing to risk. I am not and was not willing to risk the roof above my head. So just be really, honest and open. I think being honest, open, surrounding yourself with incredible people, knowing that it's probably going to take longer than you think, and it's definitely not going to happen overnight. So, absolutely have some pennies in the pot to see you through for those times when it's more difficult. And trust your instinct. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes, great advice there. Particularly the it ain't going to happen overnight.
Sadly not.
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of anyone who started their business, though, without that expectation at the back of their mind, thinking, well, all these people online have done it. It's going to happen for me this week. And then we all go through that same cycle of realization, don't we? And I think that the true test is whether you stick with it after that point.
But that goes back to, and I talk a lot about it with a really good friend of mine. He's also a coach. And the narrative that you are sold, and it's often how business coaches have very successful businesses along the narrative that is sold. And let's face it, there are lots out there. And you've got to realize that, go and Google how many times it took Edison to make the light bulb. Go and Google the story of Coca-Cola, of Apple. All other products are available. Nobody went, here's a product, bam. Apart from perhaps Alan Sugar, who always went, I reckon I can do that cheaper. And he did say that recently. It's a documentary. Go and watch that documentary. I only caught the little bits of it. It was like, I just went, I can do that cheaper. That's a whole different business model.
Yeah, I mean, one could argue that's easier than coming up with the idea in the first place. But yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah, although, I mean, you gave Apple there as an example as well. I mean, there's plenty of people who've tried to do the iPhone cheaper, and yet it's still the market leader, isn't it? So
it absolutely is. But it didn't happen overnight.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
If you look at some of these incredible things that were invented, it took years and years and years. And the other thing, I think, is the Wright brothers and the planes. When you look at, the first ones to fly and that kind of thing, around them, they had incredible teams. They were not the expert in everything. They were the expert in one thing, and everything else they went, right, we need you, we need you, we need you, we need you, and we need you, and we're going to work this together. They didn't do it on their own. And I think that there's a really valuable lesson there for business owners, because I think when you're starting out, it could be really easy to go, I just need to do it all on my own. And then when I've got enough money, but at some point you are going to need other people, which actually is where networking comes in, because it will give you access to those people that can help you. And in the early stages, there's most likely some ways that they can help you without, they'll want to be generous with the help and support that they can give you.
Absolutely, especially if you've spent the time building that network and finding the right people and contributing to it yourself as well. Yeah. No, I'm with you there as well on the networking, definitely. Great use of the Wright brothers as an example as well. Bonus points.
I did it on purpose. I absolutely did not.
Yeah. I mean, it does bring to mind another interesting thought, which is, I wonder if part of that issue and that starting assumption we all have in businesses and in modern life, that kind of the instant gratification even, is perhaps a symptom of like the rapid pace of change in technology we've seen. Because I mean, the Wright brothers, aviation, again, I'm going to talk about that, but it's a great example of it because, I mean, 1903, the first flight, and within 50 years, we were supersonic. I mean, that's a ridiculous pace. And then another 10 years and we were on the moon. Like,
crazy.
It's insane, isn't it? And I think we're seeing that same level now in terms of the digital age and AI even. So I'm hearing is going to be, give it another 5-10 years and it'll be scary what it can do.
I think in many ways it's worse now because everyone wants it now. Click of a button and it's delivered to your door within 7 minutes. Click of a button, 24 hours and it's here. And there is, and so I don't worry so much about my age group because I think we've come through it. We're kind of slowing down out the other side. But I think for the younger people coming through, they absolutely want it now. They expect it now and they don't understand why it's not happening. So I think when you're younger, you probably need it to happen sooner and faster than those of us that maybe started our businesses when we're older. Or though I read, I won't be able to quote the figures, but there are some of the most incredibly successful business owners did not start their businesses until they were much later in life. I think it's Colonel Sanders was about 60 or something.
Yeah.
So, young people, wait, it's okay. It'll come later. But I think because you're absolutely right. It's now. I want it now. And that's a real problem for us because it doesn't happen overnight. And I think young people potentially could be quite disappointed that, or they're just going to go off in a completely different tangent and way that us as older people will not be able to get. I mean, I quite frankly do not understand half of what my children says or say. It's like a foreign language. And could you just translate that for me? It's certainly the case in their text messaging. Could you not just write the whole sentence? So I know what you're talking about. This initial stuff. It's not working. So maybe it's going to be different. Maybe it's going to be better. And there's a part of me that always likes to think that the younger generation are learning from the problems that we are facing, and they will be able to come through and create a much better world than the one we presently seem to find ourselves in.
Yeah. I really like reading like the futurist type articles and things where they try to predict like what will the equivalent of AI be in 20 or 30 years. Like, so for us, I guess it was social media, our parents' generation, it was the jet age, wasn't it? And like the current generation is AI, it's LLMs, ChatGPT, all that kind of thing. What's it going to be in 20 or 30 years? Will it be living on the moon? That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
I don't want to live on the moon.
maybe go for a holiday though. That'd be cool.
I don't think. So my really good friend Paul Snell, he always talks about how we have seen, because he is the same age as me, we have seen the greatest and the most amazing changes in our lifetime. Now, I remember when there was no mobile phone, there was no email, we wrote letters.
Yeah.
And it was the WP 5.1 or something. It was kind of like a typewriter, but better. And we have just seen so much change in my lifetime. And I'm not sure that there can be change like it again. I'm just not convinced. Well, except we won't exist because AI is going to take over the world and we won't be necessary. Humans will not be necessary.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you see some of these things where they're teaching robots to self-repair and stuff like that, and you do worry that might be the case. Let's not take the human out of the loop, please.
The world would be a very sad place because it is the humanness in us all that I think makes us really incredible at what we do, whether that's in life, business, leadership. It is because we are human.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun to think about, though. Yeah, I don't know. I vaguely remember letter writing. I remember that people did it, and I never did because I was too lazy. And then the internet came along, and I was like, "Great, now I don't have to." Yeah, but yeah, it is interesting. I'm trying to think of other periods in history where there was a similar pace of change. I guess the Industrial Revolution, maybe, but not necessarily at the same scale or the same.
Or in the same
rapid pace. Yeah,
it's definitely been rapid, and I think it has to in some ways slow down, because we can get to the moon. So I don't know what's left.
Yeah, in theory we can, yeah, but we haven't for quite a long time now, have we? I mean, robots don't count in this conversation, I've decided arbitrarily. Yeah, don't know. Maybe China's on their way there and they haven't told us yet. Who would know?
Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway.
We digress.
Yes. Interesting one, though. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Funnily enough, you mentioned time travel earlier, so I'm going to ask you the time travel question. If you could go back in time, how far in your own life would you go, and what would you say to your younger self?
I think I would go back to when I was in my early 20s. And I would tell her that it's going to be okay. That you're going to have an incredible life. But be wary of the choices of relationships that you choose. No, I'm joking. Just, I think I just want to tell younger me that it's going to be okay, that I'm going to have a great life. And I just need to relax. Because I think that the younger me I just needed it. I needed to know that I was going to be okay. I needed to know that everything was going to be all right, whatever. And that's more of a life thing than anything else. And if I could just say, it's going to be okay. So relax, enjoy it, have a great time. Don't worry about it. I think that would make me. Thing is though, David, if I went back and told her that, I wouldn't be me sat here today. And I like me today.
I know that's why it's a difficult question though. That's what makes it fun for me.
Yeah, but I don't think I'd do too much harm by just telling her to just relax, enjoy yourself. It'll all pan out beautifully, eventually.
Yeah. So I've had similar answers to this in the past, and I don't know about you, but like if I went back and gave myself in my 20s that bit of advice, me in my 20s wouldn't have listened. So it's kind of an academic question anyway, even if it was possible.
I don't know. I think I would have listened.
Okay, fair enough.
I think I would have listened.
Yeah, I was quite, what's the word? Obstinate, probably, in my 20s.
I think in my early 20s I was doing a lot of travelling, so I probably would have listened and then gone to a party and forgotten all about it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I wasn't great at taking advice in my youth. Amazing. Okay. Another one that I find very interesting hearing answers to. What would you say has been your best ever experience of being led?
Being led? The first office job I ever had, I worked for Dunlop Highflex and I sold hydraulic hose assemblies. And my boss was a woman. And she was just incredible. She was friendly enough that you felt you could go to her with anything. But she was always there, really sort of guiding you. I don't know, there was just something about her. And she was really creative. Like she would get us up to Manchester to go and visit Matty Ferguson and go and, meet the team up there. She was really creative. And remember, I'm quite old. So this is going back some time. And I don't know, there was just something about her and she made me want to be more like her because she cared about her team and she said what she was going to do, and was there for us, but also part of the team. And I was never frightened to go to her with anything. So for me, and that was probably one of my first experiences. Well, certainly was in an office because before that I was waitressing in a cocktail bar. So yeah, she was pretty incredible as I look back.
That approachability is something we don't hear mentioned so much anymore, and we should, because it's really important, isn't it? Because it is quite difficult to get it right, though, I think, especially if you're an earlier career leader and you'll be feeling that pressure probably to be seen as a leader, which means separate to others, and therefore that makes approachability quite a challenge.
Well, I think there are more challenges probably now than in those days, and there are lots more lines that you could inadvertently cross without meaning to. So I think that it's harder to be a leader that feels approachable, because is that, especially if you're a young person on that leadership journey, because you want to still be sort of their friend and help them and support them, but you've also got to be this person over here, and that's a really big transition. And you may have come from that team that you're now managing, for example, so it is a really big transition.
Yeah, I think these days, I mean, the pace of the technology change as well, I feel like it's a bit of a double-edged sword in terms of like the logistics of it. In theory, it should be a lot easier to be approachable. Like you don't even have like the office door to leave open anymore, or have the sign outside about yes, come and talk to me, or no, go away, sort of thing, like certain other managers of the past used to do. Now it's just send me a WhatsApp or a Slack message or an email, or nobody says just give me a ring that much anymore. But anyway, but I feel like that in itself is a challenge, because if it's that easy, then you've got the opposite problem, haven't you, of just every thought just comes to you, and you've got that same like too much information, overwhelm. How do you process it all? So there's, I don't know, maybe it's just as difficult as it ever was, just for different reasons.
Yeah. But for me, that when you were talking about that WhatsApp and then you have too much information and everything else, I'm like, well, why don't they just have one-to-ones with people? It's a bit like networking, have a big team meeting. And, this is the kind of stuff that I do with business owners when we're not quite sure what's going on. Okay, so when are your team meetings? They're every Monday, but we haven't done those for a while. Okay, you need to get back onto that. How often are you having those ones? Well, we're having those meetings, and then we used to have individual ones, but we've fallen off the bandwagon. Okay, get back on that. So there is sometimes, goes back to simple, which was what we said at the beginning. We insist on overcomplicating things. And that's also about boundaries. So if you're a leader and you want to create really strong boundaries, nobody should be WhatsApping you. And they certainly shouldn't be snapping you. Surely that's what the kids do. There's no snapping in the office, is there?
No idea.
We don't know what it's like to be.
Not worked in an office for 5 years now. Maybe they are doing that. I wouldn't know.
Oh, God, I hope to God not.
Yeah, so I did make an assumption there in what I was saying, and then my assumption was that those one-to-ones are happening. And I was thinking more in terms of people coming to you when they have a problem that isn't raised during those. But you're right. I mean, I don't know.
There's another layer of complexity, isn't there? So someone's come to you with a problem and like, I think you should go to HR. Or I'm not sure if I'm treading on. So now suddenly we've got this complexity of there's a team to deal with this stuff, but actually you want to support that person, and how do you support that person, and what do you do? So I think it's more complicated. We've overcomplicated it. Yeah,
potentially. But you are right as well, though. Like it is simple. Not necessarily easy. And it certainly requires a bit of discipline and
that's
sticking
a whole
to
different episode.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I mean, there is an interesting conversation to be had even around, like we're talking buzzwords earlier, weren't we? But like discipline, that's a word you don't hear very much anymore, because it has quite a negative connotation, I think, in the workplace now. Rightly so, because it's been abused by some quite toxic behaviours. But fundamentally, there is a self-discipline element to leadership. Like, you've got to do it right yourself if you expect anyone else to do it for you as well. So,
and it plays a role, in that resilience.
Indeed, and like work ethic and just showing up and doing things.
Correct.
But I understand why it's not fashionable anymore, as well as a word. Okay, last question, my favourite question.
Okay.
Some people really struggle with this one. Others just have an instant answer and don't have to think about it.
Now I'm going into panic mode and I won't have an answer.
No pressure. It's called Leadership Heroes.
Leadership Heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, but it could be anyone you could think of, alive or dead, past or present, real or even fictitious, it's got to be someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. So who would that be for you and why?
Do you know, I don't know if they're a good model or not, but Queen Victoria came to mind because, she was very strong. She was very determined. She knew what she wanted. She got things done. In fact, there's a couple of other names that are coming to mind, but I don't want to go down the political route. There's a female politician that's coming to mind. I mean, she knew what she wanted and off she went. But Queen Victoria. But before that, I was thinking that for me, leadership is so much about the person, and it's a person who can be empathic and understanding and is driving the success of others. A good leader drives the success of others. And so I'm not sure that I can give you a person. That's what it is, I guess, for me. But for some reason, Queen Victoria came to mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure she did much driving of success in others. Maybe
no,
through
she
fear.
Definitely didn't in others. She was, she was one of these women, wasn't she? That was a very strong leader. I mean, there are so many we could choose from, actually, because now there's other names coming to my head, but they're all. The trouble is, we'll come across one, because this would be a really interesting debate just to have. It's one of those things. Are they a really good leader or are they not? Because some people will say that they are. Somebody else would go, well, actually, they did X, Y, and Z. There is a fabulous podcast that does exactly this, that takes a leader and looks at the good and the bad. And they decide whether they were good or bad. So I think there are plenty of people out there that I might say are really good leaders and somebody else might say not.
I think that's always going to be a bit of a risk when we're talking about historical figures, isn't it? Like the classic one is Winston Churchill, isn't it? Because, I mean, I think probably both sides of the argument, in inverted commas, would agree that during those war years, he was the perfect leader, or as close to perfect as a human would ever be. And I think that's why you're so right about the context mattering. So if I was answering this question, it would be perfect for the context within which, that would be my caveat, within which they had to operate. And so you can pick great examples like that, which, like I said, Churchill is one and comes up quite a lot. Nelson Mandela is another one, comes up a lot, because again, like there were times in his life and his career where he was far from perfect, and he would have been the first to admit that, I'm sure. But then that specific circumstance when it was needed, he was the perfect leader for the job, and he was there at the time, and the world arguably would be very different if he hadn't been. Abraham Lincoln, another example that springs to mind as well.
So maybe when we talk about those leaders and those types of leaders that have gone before, it is circumstance that helps to make them a great leader. Now, they have to have those skills, and I think they have to have something in them to be able to step up in the way that they did. But it's circumstance that enabled and allowed them to step up in that way and to be the leaders that we now see them as. Yeah,
and I think the sum of their experiences before it as well, and temperament quite often too.
Yeah.
I mean, again, going back to Churchill, like Churchill as a national leader in the 60s versus during the war years, he was arguably the same person, and the circumstances had very much changed. And it just didn't work anymore.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because Churchill could have taken us through the war years and done exactly as he had and still been an incredible leader. But if we hadn't had the result that we did, we might not say he's a very good leader at all. But he possibly would have done exactly the same things. They just didn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, we never would have heard of him, would we? If that had happened. Probably most of us wouldn't be here. But to be frank.
Now I need to be really careful, because there's all sorts of things going around in my head. Like, no, don't say that, Lindsey. No, don't say that.
Yeah, no, this is why I love this question, though. This is why it's my favourite one, because you go down all these random tangents and some blind alleys as well, probably. And yeah, I love the answers.
But it's a bit like Queen Elizabeth, because she was an incredible leader in some respects. But it all goes down to context, circumstance, who you are when you look in. So I'm going to look in and see her one way. Someone else who's not a royal. I mean, I'm not a royalist, but someone else who's very anti-royalist is going to look in and go, well, actually, she was terrible. Because we're all looking at it from our own viewpoint, from our own perspective, with our own experience.
True. Well, Lindsey, I'm going to have to bring it to a close, I'm afraid. I've run out of time.
It has been amazing.
It's been great talking to you, as it always is. So thank you so much for being with us. I will put your website as well in the show notes so everyone can find out more about you. I'm sure they will want to after this conversation. So yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, and you, David.
Listener or viewer, as always, if you would like to learn more about this week's guest, and I do encourage you to do so, click on one of those links down in the episode description. If you're looking for leadership support, I'm here to help with that as well. Your first port of call should be www.leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. On there you will find some resources, articles, a Leadership Heroes quiz as well. You can register for my next Leadership Values event as well, which is always a bit of fun. And there will also be a green button that's sprinkled around the website at various places where you can come and join the Integrity Leaders online community for new leaders, first-time managers, or founders of businesses. If leadership is something you want to learn more about, it's something you're struggling with, if getting the best from your people is a challenge for you right now, then that is the place to be. And as always, my LinkedIn profile link is in there as well. If you have any questions about any of these things, or you just want to have a chat about this episode or any of the others, do connect with me. Do drop me a message. Always happy to talk leadership. That's all we've got for you for today. Thank you for being with us. I hope you'll be back again next week. And until then, be a leader, not a boss.